Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis, and today we have part two of my interview with Avi Chomsky. And if you remember, a few weeks ago, we had an interview. We talked about the history of the Middle East. Now I want to get into something a little more, I guess you could say, controversial. We want to talk a little bit about the Hamas war. But before we do that, there'll be an image on your screen, and it shows from 1947 or 48 all the different conflicts that Israel has had with its Arab neighbors. And what it shows is that who started the war, who was attacked. And you can see that sometimes there was 5 Arab nations, sometimes there was only 1 or 2. But the bottom line is who started it and who was attacked. And then you have to ask yourself the question, why is it that this happens? Why do they always attack Israel? What is the problem? Why won't they accept peace? So I'll go with you on that one.
So I guess my first question is, who made that chart? Because I don't exactly agree with its conclusions about who started and who was attacked in each of them. So I just was wondering, where did you get that from?
I got that online, and the only...
But somebody made it, right?
Yeah, and I don't know who made it, to be quite honest, but there's only one there that I think is controversial. And I believe that was the 67 war. And my question for that is, yes, Israel attacked, but why did they attack? Okay, the Arab nations were beginning to surround Israel with military equipment and with military people, and instead of waiting for them to attack, Israel attacked. Sort of like what one could argue Ukraine should have done against Russia, because Russia was coming around and bringing all their materials over and their people over, and then they waited, and then Russia attacked. Well, better to be on the offensive than the defensive.
So I'm actually glad you brought up Russia and Ukraine, but as a historian, we teach a lot about wars. And as historians, we usually try to avoid broad generalizations because there's always exceptions, and every historical situation is unique. But you can make a pretty broad generalization that almost every war has various factors leading up to it. It's not just everybody's all happy and then suddenly someone decides to attack somebody else. There's virtually always, and this is what historians do, is try to untangle all of the different actions, factions, factors, things that are going on that lead up to a war. So, in your 3rd grade textbook, you might have learned, oh, this war had one cause and this was the cause. But that's never the case, that a war has one exact cause. There's always multiple things going on that lead to the point where there's an attack. So really, even although, if we're going to try to disentangle and say, okay, we'll blame this side for starting this one and this side for starting that one, which I'm not sure is a useful question to even ask. But even if we were to accept the premise that one side always starts the war in the middle of nothing, is the United States going to possibly start a war with Canada tomorrow? And then Canada can say, oh no, the United States attacked us out of nowhere. No, because there are factors that lead up to a country attacking another country. I would disagree with the picture that was drawn there. And that's why my question was, well, who made that? Definitely not a historian. Well, but I feel like that is kind of a work of Israeli propaganda, trying to show we're always the good guys. Everyone's always attacking us for no reason. But that's not how history works.
Well, let's say this. Okay, back in 1947, when the UN had a two-state solution. Who declined the two-state solution?
Well, actually, both sides
No,
declined the
Israel
two-state
accepted
solution.
it. And in the past, since then, there's been 5 or 6 more two-state solutions that have been proposed. Israel has accepted every one. And
We would have to disagree on that, because I don't think Israel has ever accepted a two-state solution. And if they had, there would be 2 states. There's only 1 state, because Israel will not accept a two-state solution.
Well,
if there was only 1 state and it was a Palestinian state, then I could see you perhaps saying, oh, they won't let Israel have a state because they occupy the whole territory and they won't let Israel have a state. But since 1948, it has been the opposite. Israel is the only one who has a state, and the Palestinians have never had a state. So you can't say the Palestinians won't accept a two-state
Palestinians
solution.
have not had a state, but they've been offered a state. And they were offered a state by President Trump. They declined. They've been offered a state by President Biden. They've declined.
The Israeli government, I don't know what you're talking about when you say offered a state, like Trump can't offer them a state. It's unless Israel agrees to withdraw from territories and allow Palestinian rights, it doesn't matter if Biden says, oh yeah, we support a two-state solution. He says that, and yet all of his actions undermine a two-state solution. Just like he says, oh, we want a ceasefire, but all of his actions undermine the possibility of a ceasefire.
Okay, at the end of August of '67, Arab leaders met in Khartoum in response to the war to discuss the position toward Israel. They reached the consensus that there should be no recognition, no peace, no negotiations with the state of Israel. Now, one question would be...
So when has Israel agreed to negotiate with the Palestinians? I'm not saying other Arab nations, I'm saying the Palestinians.
Well,
and when has Israel agreed to withdraw from the territories it occupies? Since 1967, Israel has not, the only territory that Israel has withdrawn from is the Sinai Peninsula.
Correct.
It has not withdrawn from any Palestinian territories. Therefore, there can't be a Palestinian state until Israel withdraws.
Well, Israel's not going to withdraw until there's a Palestinian state.
There can't be a state with no territory.
There can be in the negotiations to say, okay, you'll have, say, for argument's sake, East Jerusalem, we'll have West Jerusalem. You'll have the West Bank.
But Israel has never said that. It still occupies
that's
all
not,
those territories.
Yeah, of course it occupies them. And wouldn't you, if you were attacked all these times, unprovoked?
Well, I disagree with attacked and
why would you
unprovoked.
do anything but do your best to protect yourself? Just the latest war now, the Gaza war. Are you going to tell me that was provoked by Israel?
Absolutely. Israel has occupied Gaza since 1967. It's attacking a territory that it occupies.
But they occupied it for what reason?
To build settlements there?
No. How about for protection? Because they keep on getting attacked. For Hamas,
Well,
Hamas took over Gaza from Fatah.
When Hamas won the election, you mean? And
won the election from Fatah. They have
when Hamas agreed to participate in the peace process and agreed to participate in the electoral process and agreed to negotiate and agreed to a peaceful path, and Israel said
Hamas
no.
has never agreed to peace.
Actually,
never
they have.
agreed to peace.
Actually, if you look at what's been happening, Hamas has repeatedly, since at least 2017, and really since it agreed to participate in the electoral process, said, we will participate in a peaceful, negotiated path.
Gaza
And
is ruled by
certainly,
Hamas.
right now, it is Hamas that is demanding a ceasefire, and Israel that is saying no ceasefire over and over and over again. And Biden says, well, Israel agreed to a ceasefire. And the next day, Netanyahu says, we're not agreeing to any ceasefire. We'll stop fighting for a week or two, but then we're going back. We're not going to stop fighting. So that's not a ceasefire.
Hamas has their purpose there is an Islamic group which is committed to the destruction of Israel.
Okay, who are you reading there now?
I left there was like 15 pages of different sources that they have, and I mean,
anyone can say anything, but why don't you look at what Hamas, why don't you read, for example, Hamas's covenant of 2017, where they say very clearly that they will accept a negotiated path to a two-state solution.
That's not what I hear on the news.
I know, it's not what you hear on the news, because...
But let me ask you a question.
But what is you can find it very easily.
What is your definition of politics?
Tell me where you're going with that question, because I don't even know how to begin to answer it.
Okay, my definition of politics is the art of compromise. When has Hamas tried to compromise? With the Trump peace proposal, with the Biden peace proposal, with any peace proposal? They are designed for the, well, like
Hamas agreed to Biden's peace proposal. It's Israel that refuses.
No, Israel has accepted it.
No, Netanyahu, who's the prime minister, right, said, we are not going to stop fighting. We'll say okay to your peace proposal, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop fighting. We're going to keep fighting.
We're going to fight until they have peace, yes.
So then if he's not agreeing to the peace proposal, if he says we're going to keep fighting, that's not what peace is. Peace isn't you keep fighting. Peace is you stop fighting.
Israel has accepted ceasefires. Hamas has not.
That's not true. There have been multiple ceasefires.
Hamas has a logo, I guess you could say, from the river to the sea. Okay? Isn't that genocide?
Okay. From the first of all, that's not a logo by Hamas. That's a slogan. And it's a slogan that's used by both Israel and pro-Israel political organizations and Hamas and pro-Palestinian organizations. Israel says, from the river to the sea, if you look at the if you look at the Likud party platform, for example, the Likud is the ruling party in Israel, right? That's Netanyahu's party. If you look at the Likud party platform over the years, every single time it publishes a party platform, it says, there will be only one state between the river and the sea, and it will be Israel. During this war, several times, Netanyahu has said, there will be only Israeli control from the river to the sea. So from the river to the sea describes a geographical area from the river to the sea. The question is, what is going to happen between the river and the sea? Israel's position is that Israel will be the only state, and it will be a Jewish state between the river and the sea. I've been in many protests here where there's a slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And what we mean by that, I'm Jewish. I'm not going to advocate genocide against Jews. I'm not going to advocate genocide against anybody. There's one genocide going on right now, and it's a genocide against Palestinians. So that's the one I'm most concerned about, because there's no genocide against Jews happening now. If this was the 1930s, I might be more worried about genocide against Jews, but it's not. There's no genocide against Jews going on now. There's a genocide going on against Palestinians. When we say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, we're referring to the fact that right now, Israel controls all of the territory between the river and the sea, and it's the stated policy of the government of Israel that it will control all the territory between the river and the sea, and that Palestinians are not free anywhere in that territory. In fact, we think they should be free everywhere in that territory.
Well,
that doesn't say anything about what kind of government there should be, how many states there should be. We're not talking about that when we say from the river to the sea. We never say from the river to the sea, there will be only one state, and it will be a Palestinian state in which all Jews will be expelled. That's what the Israelis say in the opposite. That's not what we say.
Actually,
we say Palestinians have rights inside Palestine, outside Palestine, between the river and the sea, in the West Bank, in Gaza, in pre-48, in 1948 Israel, and in the diaspora all Palestinians should be free.
There's a difference between Israel controlling the territory and having all Israelis murdered. Now, in what Israel wants to do, and you can't blame them with all the wars that there have been for their protection, and let's face it, who sends missiles into Israel indiscriminately, killing women, children, and men? Could be schoolyards, could be unprovoked. Who does that?
Stop
Except
saying
for Hamas.
unprovoked, because
It is unprovoked.
Because
I was in Israel a number of years ago, and I went and I talked to some Palestinians, and I said to them, why is it that you live in this country if you hate the Jews?
whoever said that Palestinians hate the Jews?
Well,
I mean, you're putting words in their mouth, so I don't know how they're going to answer.
I asked that particular question. They answered, we don't hate the Jews, and the living conditions in Israel are much better than in the Arab countries. But Chris, want to show that tape?
Let me just say that one of the reasons that the living conditions are better in Israel than in any of the Arab countries is because, well, I mean, you're not going to count the West Bank and Gaza there, but because the Arab countries are always being attacked by Israel. You said, who's sending rockets into Israel? I will say, who's sending rockets into Lebanon? Who's sending rockets into Syria? Who's sending rockets into Jordan? Who's sending rockets into Egypt? Who's sending rockets into Gaza? Who's sending rockets into the West Bank? They're bombing the West Bank.
Right, but
I mean, you can always say that.
That's what you call self-defense.
But that's what you call
Chris, okay, Chris, try it now.
Okay, I'll stop.
احنا تهجرنا من يافا واليوم جايين نحكي عن حقنا بالعودة وكيف لحد ما نرجع لأراضينا في يافا وأراضينا بحيفا والليل والرملة إنه راح نرجع قريبا جدا لو شو ما يصير يصير مش راح يصير سلام السلام بدناش إياه.
شو بيعلموكم عن حق العودة بالمدارس؟
عادش ما احنا مشروع شهادة كلنا واحنا لازم ندافع عن وطننا كتير راح ناخذ حقنا والله ينتقم منهم ان شاء الله يموتوا كلهم. القدس عاصمة فلسطين وراح تضلها لنا مش راح تتغير راح تضلها لنا. المستوطنين اللي فيها كلهم راح ينتخوا.
يا توتة الدار صبرك عالزمان انجار لابد ما نعود مهما طول المشوار يابا 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 يابا.
وحابة أقول لكم إنه مفتاح العودة لساته معنا وراح نفتح يوم من الأيام في بيوتنا.
مثل إني بتعلم بجهدي وحق إني آخذ وطني ونحرر فلسطين يعني الناس الشهداء يعني بيقدروا يحرروا فلسطين إذا بنضلهم هيك.
أنا نور المسيمة مديرة نادي أشبال العاصفة. إحنا كل سنة اللجنة الوطنية بتعمل نوادي صيفية في مخيم عسكر. قسمنا الأطفال ل4 مجموعات حتى بأسماء شهدائنا في مخيم عسكر أساسهم يضلوا حاضرين في ذهنهم وفي أفكارهم ويتعلموا منهم البطولة ويضلهم مستمرين في درب المقاومة. وفي عندهم يعني كل طفل مستعد يكون مشروع شهيد مقابل إنه يحافظ على المبادئ اللي إحنا مترسخة عنا. حقنا في العودة وإن شاء الله انتفاضة أقوى جاية وهدول أطفالنا هم اللي راح يقودوها.
My contention is that when you teach kids to hate, you're not going to have peace. And if that's what's going on in the Gaza or in the West Bank, then what you're doing is you're teaching kids to hate, and it's going to take generations to realize that everybody's got a right to live, everybody's got a right to have a life, and peace is the best way to go. Now, okay, Israel has to give up some land. They've given the West Bank is one, Gaza is one that they can give up. They've already, I mean, Israel won those territories in the '67 war. The Yom Kippur War, I don't remember which one.
67.
Okay. But now it's the Palestinian lands. And
not really. It's still under Israeli occupation. Both are still under Israeli occupation.
Yes, it's under Israeli occupation.
And the West Bank is being flooded. I mean, it's already been flooded, but since the Gaza war began, further flooded with Israeli settlers in violation of international law.
But the
And
question
hundreds of Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since the Gaza war began also.
You know, there's been thousands of Palestinians that have been killed in Gaza because Hamas uses them as shields. And, you know,
Well,
Israel,
I object to that formulation too. They've been killed because they live in Gaza.
No, they've been killed because Hamas wants them as shields. Now,
But Hamas isn't killing them. Israel is killing them.
Because they're shields. What are you supposed to do? This is a
Stop
war
killing
of defense.
people.
Okay, then stop. Then I'll tell you what. If Hamas stops attacking Israel, maybe the killing will end.
So all of the Hamas armed forces and unarmed forces that entered Israel on October 7th were driven out on October 8th. So since October 8th, this has not been a war of defense. It's been a war of offense by Israel.
That's right. It's a war on offense now to try and prevent any more of this from happening. You look at how many times there's been rockets into Israel.
And how many times has Israel bombed Gaza?
Every time that there's rockets coming into Israel, Israel will respond. Because what they're trying to do is say, hey, enough. But if you're going to attack us, we're going back at you. End of story. And we're going to go back at you a lot harder because we're trying to...
Because we're a lot stronger and we're in control and we have all the arms and you are weak and basically unarmed.
You would, well, you know, they're not unarmed. I mean, Iran's done a good job of that. But let me ask you this, okay?
Well, if they were so strong and well armed, how come they were driven back in one day and since October 8th have been subject to relentless Israeli bombardment and close to 40,000, probably closer to 180,000 people have been killed. The entire area has been reduced to rubble.
Yes, it has.
So if they're so well armed, how come that's happened?
Do you think maybe it's time for peace? Because you're right. Israel has gone back and said,
and you know what Israel could have said on October 8th?
We have had it.
Let's negotiate a peace. We will allow people in Gaza to survive.
How many people did Hamas kill on October 7th?
Well, it's not totally clear because the Israeli army investigations are only just beginning. So how many people how many Israelis were actually killed on October 7th? It looks like approximately 1,200. How many of those were killed by Hamas? How many of those were killed on October 7th? We really don't know because what's starting to come out by the Israeli military investigations is how many Israelis, and we've also seen happening in Gaza, where Israeli hostages in Gaza were actually killed by Israeli forces rather than by Hamas. But again, there's a fog of war. We don't know. The Israeli military is only beginning its own investigations. There need to be independent investigations before we can actually know exactly what happened.
Unfortunately, there weren't many Israeli forces there. Otherwise, that never would have happened. But let's go on a little further.
But I want to say something else about that that little video. And, you know, I wish I'd seen it beforehand so I could remember a little more clearly what everyone said. But the overwhelming, so everyone except for one person there was a child, right?
Yes.
So they were interviewing children.
Right.
Of all those children, and I don't know when and where that was filmed. Do you know?
All I know is that it was filmed last year.
A year ago. Okay. So the overwhelming sentiment that I heard from those children about what they learn in school is that they have the right of return. So I think we need to talk about what they are saying when they say they have the right of return. Only one child out of all the ones interviewed, and again, you know, I'd like to know who made it and for what purpose, because obviously when you show those kinds of interviews, you pick and choose.
I can send it to you.
So clearly whoever filmed it was looking to have children saying specific things. And, you know, those kids might have said, we learn math, but they left out the parts where the kids said they learned math. So we don't know the context in which those, but clearly there was, the children were saying, we learn about the right of return in school. One child and only one child said something about killing Jews. So I suspect, given the what I interpret from what I heard to be the goals of whoever made that, if more children had talked about wanting to kill Jews, that would have been in the documentary, the clip as well. I don't know, because I don't know who made it. I don't know what they were looking for. I would want to research a little more where it came from.
I will send it to you.
But apparently they were only able to find one young child saying that. And of course, they included that. But what the vast majority of children didn't say anything about learning anything like that in school. They said they learned about the right of return. And I think it's important for us to understand, what does that mean? The right of return means that Palestinians have rights in their homeland, in the places they were expelled from. They are not allowed to return to the places they were born, to the places their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were born. They were expelled, and they are not allowed to return. That is, in fact, one of the key things that Israel refuses to recognize, even though the United Nations, way back in 1949, ruled that, yes, Palestinians who were driven out of Palestine have the right to return. And Israel has adamantly said, absolutely not. And when a Palestinian child says we have the right to return, that's used to show, I don't know, what's it trying to show? How bad Palestinians are?
Maybe if we have peace, if the Arabs or the Hamas is willing to negotiate peace, maybe they can return, but right now we're not at peace.
But Israel has never agreed. It's Israel who has to grant the right of return, and since 1948, Israel has adamantly refused to grant the right of return. Israel's military drove hundreds of thousands of people out of Israel and would not let them return, and has not let them return for all of these decades. That is the essence of this problem.
And the essence of this is, if you're continually going to be attacked indiscriminately with bombs and suicide bombers and things, what would you do to protect your people? Would you say,
I would not set up a situation. So, when the United States... Keep in mind
that over 1 million Palestinians live in Israel now and work in Israel now.
They don't work there anymore because since October 7th, the Palestinians who live on the West Bank have not been allowed to go into Israel to work, nor have the Palestinians who live in Gaza. So those who work in Israel
that may be true, but there's a war on now. How can you trust anybody right now? We need peace. And like I say, Biden has proposed a peace proposal.
And Israel says, we like your proposal, but we're not going to stop fighting. So there's not going to be any peace unless Israel agrees. Hamas,
we're out of time. But maybe we need another show. I don't know. But I hope this was interesting to you. And I hope you learned something from it, whichever side you're on. As you can see, there's points to both sides, and you decide. Good night.